Hello and welcome to this edition of Fulton Justice. I'm your host, Yolanda Lewis, District Court Administrator for the Atlanta Judicial Circuit. This program is dedicated to providing you with resources, information, and a closer look at how our justice system works for you. Today, we'll discuss juvenile courts with a specific focus on programs, alternatives, and the agencies that work in conjunction with the Fulton County justice system to execute our commitment to saving children. As a matter of history, a separate juvenile justice system was established in the United States about 100 years ago with the goal of diverting youthful offenders from the destructive punishments of criminal courts and encouraging rehabilitation based on the individual juvenile's needs. This system was to differ from adult or criminal court in a number of ways, to include a focus on the child as a person in need of assistance and to rehabilitate and reintegrate the child into society. The core purpose of the juvenile justice system is to promote public safety and reduce juvenile delinquency by developing individual responsibility and accountability. This purpose must be pursued through means that are fair, just, and recognize the unique characteristics and needs of our children. Stay with us as we begin our discussion on juvenile justice and highlight some of the innovative programs created to enhance the quality of life for our youth and families here in Fulton County. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Joining us now is Michelle Barclay, the Assistant Director at the Georgia Administrative Office of the Courts and staff to the Supreme Court of Georgia's Committee on Justice for Children. Welcome, Ms. Barclay.
Thank you.
It's good to have you. So I want to talk about your work with the committee, but first of all, you have a very interesting story and your family has been involved with juvenile justice for a very long time. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. My husband and I basically got involved in the child welfare system because I worked in Fulton County Juvenile Court as an intern for a summer while I was in law school. My plan was to become a healthcare lawyer. I had been a nurse for 10 years at Grady and Emory Hospital before then. But I had one summer intern while I was in Fulton County Juvenile Court, and it really awakened me to the plight of the children in the child welfare system. I ended up becoming the staff to the Committee on Justice for Children, and over the years that went by, I involved my husband, who's a statistician, and he ended up giving a pretty big donation to Emory Law School to set up a center called the Barton Center. It's named after my husband's grandparents. That's focused just on systemic solutions for the child welfare system. It's particularly legal.
So welcome back to Fulton County. It's good to have you back. Let's talk a little bit about your work with the committee. Tell us a little bit about the mission and the goals that you've set forth, or the committee itself has set forth for children.
The mission of the Committee on Justice for Children is to strive to improve the civil process of Georgia courts' child abuse neglect cases. There's a prosecutorial process, which on the criminal side, we only focus on the child protection side. So we look at the big systemic issues. We do a lot of data analysis to kind of see how the system is working. We didn't have anything in place when we started this committee, and today we have about 100 measures that we use to try to monitor the system. Things like adoption timeframes, how many children are coming into foster care, when they leave, how well do they do when they go home, do they stay or do they come back? These are all things that we have at our fingertips today that we didn't have about 18 years ago when we started the committee.
And so the information that you have available really focuses on the other side. I know we hear a lot about delinquency, but you're focusing on those things that are important and good and really to contribute to the sustainability of the children once they go through the system.
Right. There's a legal process that when a child has been deemed deprived, is our legal term for it, there's a court process that the children have to go through. When I was in Fulton County Juvenile Court as an intern, I witnessed that, and it was this is about 20 years ago, but it was pretty arbitrary. There was a lot of chaos. Sometimes it would go well and sometimes it didn't. And I remember thinking at that time, we can do better than this. We can be more organized. And I think that part of my background as a nurse helped me see there's a lot of emergencies and chaos happening in the hospitals, and yet it still ends up being in an ordered way. So I've tried to bring that expertise to my view of the Fulton County courts, as all courts across the state. There was a couple of boys that I had when I was in Fulton County Juvenile Court that really affected me deeply. It was a case I had during that summer. It was an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old, and the 8-year-old had a worry line across his forehead because he was so concerned about what was going to happen to him. And he was arguing to stay with his brother, and yet when the system had no place to put 2 boys, or that's what I was told at the time. And we ended up arguing that they should stay together, and they went to the children's shelter, which today is closed, but at that time it was a pretty rough place to put little kids, but they were able to stay together. And I remember thinking at that time, we can do better than this. This is Atlanta. We don't have to go by the limitations of the system. We can get more people involved in this, and they can do more for these children.
That's an amazing story, and I think that's one of the things that's important, that you have real life experience. You're working on the committee, but you've worked in the system before, so it makes all the difference. So talk a little bit, I know you've worked in Fulton County and you know a lot about how our system works, but you're doing work across the state of Georgia.
Right.
And so what's so unique about Fulton County?
Fulton County has gone through so much change. It's our biggest county, has the highest number of children in foster care. At one time, it had over 1,000 children in foster care. Today, it's about 650, and that number fluctuates because there's always children coming in and out. But Fulton County has been through a class action lawsuit, which has actually benefited it in many ways, even though it was a very painful process to go through. Right. Today, Fulton County has a wonderful person named Willie Lovett, who's a Harvard graduate, who runs their Fulton County Child Attorney's Office. That has Alli, their court administrator, who's very, very strong and has brought a lot of the organization that the system so badly needed to the court. And they have a new presiding judge, Judge Bradley Boyd, who's worked almost every job in the Fulton County Juvenile Court before he became a judge. So he's got this wealth of experience and empathy that he brings to the court. One of the things I wanted to say about Fulton County is they've just started a brand new project called the Cold Case Court, which there's more information about it here on this report, but we've been doing this project for 3 years now. What we're doing is trying to get to the children who look like they're going to age out without finding permanency. We use a statistically predictive model to find those children, and then we probably bring in a broad group of experts to take a look at those cases. Is there anything that we can do? Is there anything that hasn't been done before? Anything that should be revisited? And in those courtrooms or in those meetings, it happens different ways, we brainstorm about ways we can do things. And we have had really good success with bringing that new look, that fresh look, fresh people with different ideas. One case in particular, Ian's case is in this report. We found his paternal relatives by bringing in a private investigator, and they ended up adopting him before he was 18, which we had not found them earlier in the case.
Wow. So I want to make sure that everyone understands some of the terms that you mentioned. Age out. Talk about that, and how often do you see that in cases?
Right. That's one of the worst outcomes we can have, that a child would age out without getting a family, without having any family connections. Right. So those are the kind of outcomes we really want to prevent. And sometimes they're unavoidable, but most of the time we found that something can be done. There can be some connection made with either in the family or outside of the family.
So the important work that you're doing with the committee and with the AOC is critical. It's a state organization. How are you funded, and how is it that we're sure that you're going to be here to continue helping our children?
That's a good question. We have 2 federal grants and 1 private grant. Casey Family Programs gives us a small grant every year to manage the Cold Case Project, which allows government to be really innovative. The 2 federal grants are going to be affected by sequestration. It looks like we're going to get a 5% cut, but it looks like the grants will continue for at least another 3 years.
And so one of the other things, we talk about this often, we ask people to volunteer for the court system. I guess sometimes you feel like it's a government agency and you know, we have enough staff to manage everything that we have. Juvenile court is very unique in the way of needing volunteers. So why is it so important to volunteer with juvenile court? And then what roles do you think volunteers can get involved in the system?
Because of all the secrecy around the system, I lived 5 miles away from the juvenile court. I had no idea the kind of stories and the kind of situations that children were in until I was there. I absolutely recommend that your viewers please become involved. Become a CASA. You can go to georgiacasa.org and become a CASA. It's a volunteer with the court. You'll take 1 case and advocate for 1 child to get what the child needs. We also desperately need foster parents. And it doesn't necessarily mean foster parents to take a child and adopt a child, but we need respite foster parents so that foster parents can take vacations and get breaks. A lot of these children have experienced severe trauma, And it's really hard to manage every single day. So giving those people breaks is a great way to get involved and volunteer. You can also be temporary foster parents, where you just take little kids for a week or two until we find a better, more stable placement for them. So there's lots of ways to get involved. But if you can't do any of that, I want people to think about becoming a mentor to various older children. Also thinking about getting with your church and organizing a potluck for maybe your DFAC's office or the juvenile court. They don't get thanked, and they save lives every single day.
That's
and
true.
we really only hear about them when something really bad goes wrong.
Yeah. Final thoughts. What's the future of juvenile justice here in Georgia?
I think the future is bright. I think that there's a lot more expertise and organization and structure around the system than there was before. It's getting better all the time. I also think we need more empathy and more love in the system. I see many more children turn around with those kind of things and any services that we can provide. It's been pretty amazing to see children who've experienced really severe trauma, and yet when someone steps up with love and commitment, that child actually can heal and become better. And I have lots of success stories.
Well, thank you so much for being here. You're doing great work, and we appreciate you being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Up next, we'll be joined by court administrator and attorney Omotayo Alli. Stay tuned. Our next guest, Ms. Omotayo Alli, is the Chief Administrative Officer of the Juvenile Court of Fulton County. Ms. Alli assists with the everyday operation of juvenile court and ensures that the programs are operating effectively for our children and families. Welcome, Ms. Alli.
Thank you.
Now, we're going to talk about juvenile court because that's what you do every day, but you've had an interesting journey to juvenile court. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, before coming to juvenile court, actually, let me go back. I have been with the county for about 22 years.
Right.
And before coming to juvenile court, I was with the Public Defender's Office, where I practiced for 16 years under the directorship of Vernon Pitts.
Right.
And from that, I went to direct the Office of County Child Attorneys, and then I came to juvenile court. And I've been in juvenile court now for almost 4 years.
All right, so you've been a native of Fulton County for
Yes.
a while.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about your role as the Chief Administrative Officer for Juvenile Court.
Well, at the direction of our Chief Judge, Judge Bradley Boyd, I help assist with the overall mission of the court. I help him formulate the policies, direct the staff, manage the budget, and provide direction for the overall mission of the court.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about the mission. I know juvenile courts across the country have similar missions, but what is our mission here in Fulton County?
Our mission is to rehabilitate children, to do less of incarceration, and put more focus and attention on educating our children so they can be productive citizens. Just like every other juvenile court in the country that's following this new trend, we all have found out that it is more productive to find the rehabilitative resources to look at the underlying reasons why they come to us, either as a delinquent or deprived. And that's what we target in our juvenile court. Our goal is to make sure that they're productive citizens and that we can reframe the future for them.
So I want to talk about the type of cases that you see in juvenile court, but before we do that, I want to just ask you, I think it's interesting that there are a lot of layers and a lot of different divisions under you to make the juvenile system work. Can you talk about some of the divisions, if not all of the divisions that are under you that you have to have in order to make the system work?
The most important is the judicial unit, because we have to have the judges to preside over the cases.
Right.
The next one is the probation department. And in our probation department, we have a probation department that's well equipped and well staffed, and they use the best evidence-based resources to provide rehabilitative resources for our children. We have the clerk's office, of course, where we have to do the paperwork file and make sure that all the motions are properly filed for the court. We have a citizens panel where we use the volunteers in our community to hear the cases, deprivation cases, to make sure that the children who have been put in DFAC's custody, that the parents are doing what they're supposed to do so they can reunify with their children. We have the administrative unit. We have the detention unit where we keep the children until somebody hears their cases. We have a sheriff's department. Although they don't report to me, they report to the sheriff, but we work very closely with them because they provide security for the court.
I think that's important because I think a lot of times people don't know how many components go into actually making the system run effectively, and it's a lot of work.
Yes. Actually, let me tell you one more unit that I think I'm leaving out, the complaints office.
Yes.
That is the first contact that patrons have with the court. When you come into our court and you want to file any kind of case whatsoever, you go into the complaints office. It's where we give advice as to what citizens should do, should not do, where they should go. When parents get frustrated with their children and they come to us, this is where we send them. And we have an intake attorney who looks at the case and sends them back to either probate court or to superior court.
I see.
Whatever is necessary.
So talk to me a little bit about the type of cases that you actually see in juvenile court.
We see a lot of cases, but there are 5 main components that we see. The delinquency, when children have been accused of committing a delinquent act.
Right.
We have those. We have the deprivations, where the children have been found to have been deprived. We have legitimation and guardianship, and in those kind of cases, we work with either superior court or the probate court. We have traffic offenses. When children have committed traffic offenses, they're
Right.
brought to us, and basically what our judges do, they give them the kind of punishment that will encourage them to appreciate the risks involved in driving. Let me see what I'm leaving out. Unrulies, when children don't attend school and they're chronically absent, or they're not the trances and the unrulies. We have those too.
So which type of case do you see most often?
It's the delinquencies and the deprivations, unfortunately.
And I know that, you know, working with juveniles is almost an act of kindness and love in general. I know you see some very heartbreaking stories, but tell us about some of the good things that you see with juveniles.
You know, I'm so happy you're asking that question, because every time you flip the news, you're hearing something that's very negative about not just juvenile court, superior court. And I'm happy you're asking us what we do. We have a lot of children who come through us, and we have the rehabilitative resources for them. We have a program that we call the Learning Club, where they come to the court on Saturdays from 12 to 4. And that's where we have a partnership with the college students who come in there to talk about their educational issues and to give them direction, do their homework. And we have just started another component of that program where parents now are beginning to have their own little association on Saturdays. They come with their children. And from that, we see children graduate from school. They get their GED programs. They do what they're supposed to do. We have a lot of positives coming out of those children when they come to us. They become mentors to other children in the future. And we're very happy that we're able to provide those resources to them.
And you talked a little bit about the program that you have with college students. Talk about some of the other initiatives that you're working on in juvenile court.
Because our goal is to rehabilitate children and hopefully get them in a situation where they lead a productive life. We have about 6 initiatives now. We have the mental health initiative, where we have to address the mental health needs of our children, because you have to believe if a child has been deprived, there must be some kind of mental health component. Sometimes, not all the time. We address that and find the resources and services that will put them right on the right track. We have educational advocacy. That is very big, because we're finding out that the underlying issues for most of our children is because of lack of positive educational culture. So in juvenile court today, we have a unit that does nothing but do the assessment of the children. We have 3 educational advocates, and just recently we hired an attorney who will be able to go to the schools to make sure that all their legal needs are met. We have mentoring, where we get community volunteers and pair them with our children to provide them with a positive culture. We have job readiness, where we pair with the workforce development, both in Atlanta and Fulton County, to share with them the skills that they will need to be employed in the future and to appreciate working and being productive. We now have what we are calling the parental engagement and involvement, because we have found out that it doesn't matter what we do for our children. We want to send them back to the home that's going to support and sustain all the skills that we have given to them. So we're encouraging our parents to come in and share with us what we experience with their children and be able to participate in the process that we go through in the court.
You know, one note that I want to hit on really quickly, because I think is important in our justice system, is generational delinquency and incarceration. How often do you see that the children that come into the juvenile system have parents that are already in the criminal justice system?
I'm sure it's a lot, but we don't track that.
Okay.
We come across that information accidentally. Maybe a parent comes in, or a guardian comes in, or relative comes and say, I want to file a motion to put this child in some kind of custody because the parent is incarcerated. We don't track that particular statistics, but as a public defender, I realized that most of the issues that I dealt with as a public defender was a manifestation of a bigger issue, and that issue was in juvenile court, a juvenile delinquency related kind of action or deprivation. Most of my clients that I had at that time had some kind of delinquency in their background, or they had been deprived as a child. So to answer your question, we don't track that, but if it is there, without a doubt.
Just final thoughts. I know our justice system, our juvenile justice system looks different than it did 10 years ago. So tell us, where are we going with juvenile justice here in Fulton County?
In Fulton County, given the opportunity to do what we want to do and the resources, we're going to rehabilitate more children, provide them education, make sure their mental health needs are met, and look at the underlying issues why they come to us. 10 years ago, we dealt with the Delinquent Act. The child comes in for robbery, we take care of the robbery, and they go on probation. Today, we're looking at the reason why those children are coming to us. And you'll find out that some of the reasons why they come to us is because they're poor, because they don't have education, they don't have parental engagement, they don't have any involvement from their parents, and they don't have any positive exposure. That's what we're dealing with. And to that end, we have about 15 programs in-house, from mental health to mediation to juvenile drug court, family drug court, teen court. We have the Learning Club. We have a program where we is funded by TJ Maxx to help our kids to stop shoplifting if that seems to be the issue. And I can go on and on and on because there are 15 programs that we have in-house. And then we have a host of programs that are being supported by external
Sounds like a lot of good work.
Nonprofit agencies.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sounds like a lot of good work, and we appreciate all you do and everything that all of the employees do in juvenile court. We appreciate you being here today.
Well, thank you.
Up next, we'll share our final thoughts on the juvenile justice system. Stay tuned. Today we welcomed two distinguished guests who work each day in the juvenile justice system to save our children. Juveniles, much like adults who violate the law, must be held accountable. However, studies show that non-essential incarceration for juvenile offenders inflicts further damage on them at a greater expense to taxpayers and to public safety. Effective community-based alternatives are necessary to enhance and promote public safety, as well as achieve better long-term outcomes for juvenile, which include decreasing their propensity for recidivism. Shared accountability among all justice partners is essential to accomplishing the common goal of achieving a fair and equitable juvenile justice system, which leverages partnerships and the best interests of the individual child as opposed to focusing on punishment. Special thanks to both of our guests today, and thank you for tuning in to Fulton Justice. I'll see you next time.